Hello and welcome to the debrief. I'm Angus Scott. One name that's been a part of any transfer conversation over the last 8 months or so has been Victor Osimhen. The 25-year-old Nigerian is leaving Napoli. That we seem to know for sure, but where is he heading? Fabrizio Romano will be with us shortly to give us his view, and also Guillem Balague will be dropping in with his understanding of the Osimhen deal. Fellow Nigerian Mikel John Obi gives us his thoughts as well. In fact, there aren't many top quality number 9s knocking around, so it seems Osimhen can more or less name his price when it comes to his transfer. It's a bit like Ben Jacobs, not many like him, very, very expensive. Ben, how are you?
Very well indeed. Very kind of you to say that I can name my price. You're putting in the request for the pay rise then?
As long as I'm not paying, Ben, you know you can ask whatever you like. Ben, before we get on to Victor Osimhen, look, one of the clubs that are targeting him is Chelsea. He's going to cost a lot of money. Chelsea have recently revealed the figures that surround the club, and a lot of people have seen them with open eyes, aghast. Can you put some light on what it all means?
Yeah, I think a lot of Chelsea fans will be looking for top line, the Cliff Notes version, if you like, for those of you that went to school in the 90s and beyond. And there's a 50-page document on Companies House, and there's really three key figures. One is the parent company of Chelsea and Strasbourg, Blueco 2022, and their net losses after tax, 653 million between March 2022 and June the 30th, 2023. And that's a massive number that's driven by investment, in particular in Chelsea's men's and women's playing squads. But there's other things like the 70-odd million pounds that was paid to buy Strasbourg. The other two numbers that are more worrying, maybe for Chelsea fans, and certainly more specific, are Chelsea's pre-tax, and I stress pre-tax because the other one was post-tax, losses in the past 12 months, 90.1 million, compared to the previous year, 121.4 million. So what does this mean? Well, number one, Chelsea are still in current cycle within profit and sustainability and financial fair play. And that's really important to note because when we see these numbers, it's very easy to be alarmed and think they're new. But of course, the Premier League chose to charge Everton and Nottingham Forest and not Chelsea. So up until now, Chelsea are okay. But when they add their plans, including Victor Osimhen, can they stay within that allowable per cycle £105 million losses, or do they have to rein things in a little bit? And part of the answer to that question will be how many players can they sell? And if not enough, then it could, coupled with the lack of European football, impact the next window. So what we're seeing is Chelsea's reliance on player trading. That is really apparent within these numbers. Because if you look at the year-by-year losses in the 2 years that Clearlake Bowley have been in charge of Chelsea, the loss, for example, for the last 12 months would have been over 230 million instead of 90 million, if not for significant player sales and reduction of the wage bill. And this tells you that Chelsea's model is all about trading. So there's no cause for alarm. And if they didn't want an Osimhen and others for hundreds of million, they could probably relax a little bit because they are still quite comfortably within profit and sustainability, but less comfortably heading into the next financial year and across the cycle if one, they don't get European football, and two, they do want to spend 100+ million on a player like Victor Osimhen.
There are two things from this, Ben, that sort of I deduce. One of them is it doesn't give a sense of continuity if you are forever a club that is basically trying to wheel and deal, trying to bring in big names, and then you have to sell a load of players. And also, during the summer, there may be a change of manager. So this is a very difficult time for Chelsea and for the owners because they are still unsure about which way this club is going.
Yeah, and I think when you buy a club for 2.5 billion and then you pledge over 1.7 billion in investment on top of that, and you revamp everything and you change the club structurally and you build a multi-club model, it's all moving very fast. And that will come with operational costs, logistic costs, player transfer costs and wages and so on. So maybe the level of spending is not reflective of where Chelsea will be in a season or two, because as you say, the key to success is stability. You can't keep spending and spending and spending, and you don't want to keep spending and spending and spending, because if you do, your revamp. So Chelsea are in a 4-window plan, and to some extent we have to respect that, because if they're planning for 4 windows and the summer will be the 4th window, we have to understand where they are at the end of that window to some extent, albeit needing to see progress as well between now and then. But at the end of that, if they get who they want in each area, then if they get to 5th, 6th, 7th windows beyond that number 4 and still need to spend 200, 300 million, then it might be very exciting and it might make a lot of headlines, but it's neither sustainable nor a strong indication of actually doing smart business. And if you look at Liverpool, they revamped, they got a lot of success. Now they're revamping again, particularly their midfield, and they'll hope that they get a lot of success. If you look at Arsenal, they brought in Declan Rice, Kai Havertz, Jurriën Timber, big spend, and I would expect them to go for a striker in the summer and then it to level off. Whereas Chelsea and Manchester United more so, and Chelsea only under Clearlake Bowley and a bit less so under Abramovich, have had a bit of a habit, perhaps, of spending in quite a dramatic way and not necessarily the most structured way, and gaining a lot of instant headlines and buzz and excitement. But if you keep needing somebody, then it means that who you've bought is not necessarily right for your business and in this case your football team. So I think that Chelsea will want a period where they don't need to spend, but that's not this summer. So the balance right now with the finances is, can they do one more big window within the confines of profit and sustainability? And if they don't make European football, it might be tight unless they cash in on Conor Gallagher for 60 million. They get 35 million for Romelu Lukaku, 35 million for Ian Maatsen, a fee for Trevor Chalobah. They may need 100 million in player sales if they choose to have that big 200 or 300 million window. But we should make it clear that one issue is, are they within profit and sustainability and financial fair play? Yes. 2, if they don't spend 300 odd million, are they fine under profit and sustainability within the next cycle and financial year? Probably yes as well. But the need to spend big means that they become closer to the margins, and that's where maybe around 100 million in player sales might be necessary.
But you know, you're talking about that sort of player, and you've gone through 3 or 4 players, Ben, that may give them over 100 million. Okay, but you're looking for one Osimhen. The disruption and how much work has to go into recreating a squad that you talk about Arsenal, reworking it, Liverpool, reworking their squad. We saw Sir Alex Ferguson do it 3 or 4 times, maybe more times during his tenure, 4 or 5 times recreating strong, but within sustainable levels. It seems for so long that certainly, you know, prior to the current ownership, you go back to Abramovich, there was always change, there was always disruption there. Is there the sense with you that Chelsea and the new ownership want this summer to be the last big sort of purchasing and sale period, and then they settle down and run a different sort of program and a business plan to make this club work?
Well, it won't be different in the sense that the whole model is reliant on player trading, and that was also the case under Abramovich. Chelsea have always had a strong academy. The players that come through, great. The players that don't succeed are sellable assets. And if you're going to have a multi-club model and you're going to lean a bit on the philosophy of Red Bull, there's always going to be this element of your successes go to Chelsea and your so-called failures are marketable and can either drop down to a Strasbourg or be sold. And that reflects well on the books. And that's the Blue Co 22 model, whereas Chelsea have to adapt a little bit because of Premier League profit and sustainability, and also the need for success now as well. It can't keep being the P words like progress and project and patience, and who knows, maybe the P of Pochettino won't last as well. But this is the sort of challenge within Chelsea's model compared to Blueco 2022. On paper, for the latter, it works because it's strategic, it's long-term, it's multi-club, and it can sustain itself as long as you get a steady stream of talent and the transfer fees are investments, not expenses, and the wages are low. And if they work, they work. And if they don't work, you sell them and you still make a profit. That model works. But with Chelsea specifically, the model maybe requires experience. In fact, it definitely does. It requires instant success. It requires a serial winning mentality. It requires a manager that's going to last. It requires an investment in data. It requires more research and funding on the medical side of things. And it ultimately requires a culture and a unity. And if you don't have stability, you're very unlikely at Chelsea to have success. I think it worked for Roman Abramovich because whenever he made a change, who did a new manager inherit? The likes of Didier Drogba or John Terry or Claude Makelele or Mikel John Obi, who we'll hear from in a moment. Whereas now, if Abramovich had made the same changes and those managers had come in and they'd inherited Mikhailo Mudryk, Noni Madueke, these types of players, as high as ceilings as they've got, they can't just switch it on instantly and consistently. So I think Chelsea have laid the groundwork, which means if they have a big window and they sign a Victor Osimhen or a Benjamin Sesko or another elite striker, they will back off the spending. And that's because they've done a lot of spending away from the first team. Kendry Pyers is one example. So these players are going to come through and they're going to become Chelsea players or multi-club players in the seasons that follow, whereas now they're not really being spoken about in any great degree. And they're certainly not at Cobham week in, week out, either due to their age or because one or two of them are out on loan somewhere. So the groundwork's been laid. You can see what Chelsea are trying to do. But the challenge when you spend 250 to 350 million in every single window or almost every single window, bar last January, is if it doesn't work, despite good intentions and a strong strategy and data pointing in the right direction, it's very hard to recoup. Imagine if Enzo or Mudryk hypothetically doesn't work out. You're probably going to get half the fee back. And suddenly there are lots on the book, or they're stuck at the club because they don't want to leave and they're on long-term contracts. So this is the kind of challenge. But I sense that after this summer window, Chelsea will be in a position where they can no longer talk about project and patience and time because they've had their 4 windows. They've used their 4 windows. So if Pochettino's still there, the first 10 games of next season are going to have to provide something instant. Otherwise, people are going to start to question whether there's a sort of pot of gold at the end of this project's rainbow.
Okay, hold fire there a moment, Ben. We have still got Fabrizio Romano to come. We'll be hearing from Guillem Balague as well. Plenty more on Victor Osimhen too, because remember, he is effectively Chelsea's #1 target during the summer. And one man closer to Osimhen than most, and that's fellow countryman Mikel John Obi. And he certainly wants the striker at Stamford Bridge in the summer.
Well, I have to ask you about that. Of course, the podcast naturally has a lot of Chelsea followers. Victor Osimhen to Chelsea, genuine possibility or just media hype?
I think there's genuine interest between both. I think he loves the club. He wants to come to the club. Obviously, he wants to follow my footsteps as a Nigerian player who's played for Chelsea. I think Victor Moses as well, Celestin Mbappe, not a lot of us. And he's looked at that. London as well, fantastic city. Instead of going to Liverpool or places like that, you want to live in London. But he also has a lot of interest, like Paris Saint-Germain, Man United, but I'm still pushing, sending him messages and trying to make sure that, he doesn't expect too much. Just narrow your mind in one club, the Blues.
So you are genuinely acting as Agent Mikel?
I am pushing him. But I hope he comes to the club because he will bring so much to the club. I think one thing we lack, anybody who watched the final on Sunday will see that one thing we are lacking is scoring goals. We need that striker who will score goals. And that's what Victor will give you. He's not the most skillful guy, but goals, definitely guaranteed. I mean, if he could get us 20 goals per season, 25, who knows? That's what Erling Haaland does. That's why he's one of the best. He's not really there for link-ups and all that. Get the ball in the box and he will finish. And that's something that definitely Victor Osimhen will give us. So let's hope it works out and, he comes to Chelsea and become a legend.
Ben, that's fascinating conversation you had with him out in Doha last week. We'd love to hear from you, everyone who's listening to the debrief. Do get in touch with us via our comments section. Please, we'd love to hear your questions that Ben and I may be able to answer shortly. But what he's saying, Ben, I know there was an element of humour and a sort of wry raise of the eyebrow. How do you think actually Mikel might be able to affect anything, and how close might Osimhen be thinking that Chelsea is where he wants to end up?
It's really Mikel and also Didier Drogba, and I think Osimhen would relish the opportunity to replicate Didier Drogba's legacy at Chelsea and forge one of his own. So that's there in the back of the mind. What we should say, taking a step back, is that Victor Osimhen has decided he's leaving Napoli, and I'm told the Premier League is his preferred destination, which might be good news for Chelsea and Arsenal, and some even say Manchester United, but it's hard to understand how Manchester United would find that kind of package, because you're talking about the fee, I'll come on to that in a moment, and also £250,000 of wages each week. And maybe some will have listened to our financial chat on Chelsea and make the same point. How are they going to get Osimhen without European football? But I think the whole reason Chelsea want to offload about 100 million in outgoings is to make sure if they can get Osimhen, there's no issue financially. There's cheaper options, though, in terms of release clauses like Benjamin Sesko. With Osimhen, though, the number is kind of non-negotiable because that's how Napoli works. So when Osimhen extended at Napoli, it was an extension with a view to leaving, but the release clause baked in is relatively rigid. Maybe there's an opportunity to go higher with a different structure, but not lower or significantly so. And that number is £100 million plus. Some even say it's as high as 130 million euros, which would be about 115 million pounds. And as a consequence, Chelsea are going to have to think about this deal in terms of value, in terms of finances, and in terms of profile as well. And I think if you're judging it in football terms, the move makes a lot of sense. If you're looking at the financial side, can they get a defender or a midfielder plus another striker for the same price? And if you're looking at value, it will all just depend on how Osimhen grows. Right now, his numbers would suggest he'll be box office in the Premier League, but will that be the case when he makes the transition, or will he need some time to adapt? I think Chelsea feel like if he moves to the Premier League, they stand a very strong chance, but I wouldn't rule out PSG, who have Osimhen high on the list of their targets for replacing, in inverted commas, even though they're not like for like, Kylian Mbappe.
Yeah, there are lots of people I think who would like Victor Osimhen, and we'll see as time progresses whether Chelsea are at the front of that queue with the pressure that Didier Drogba and Mikel John Obi might be able to put on him. I'm going to get to a question before we hear from Fabrizio Romano. Fabrizio, we will hear from very, very shortly. But let's go to this, Ben. First up, Patrick Barrett-Williams. Do you think it will be a relatively quick transfer with Osimhen or a drawn-out saga? And who else is interested? Well, you've answered part of that because we know that PSG are, and there are, I would assume, many other sides that are interested in him.
Quick and slow. And I know that sounds like I'm sitting on the fence, but there's two different explanations. The quick part is that I expect Osimhen to make up his mind quickly, and any interested suitor that thinks it's financially feasible will know that there'll be competition and will want to make their pitch very quickly and not leave any uncertainty dragging out over the summer. So that's the fast part. The slow part is, again, PNS, which I'm sure makes people listening groan and put their head in their hands, because there is this cutoff date, of course, for profit and sustainability, and clubs therefore that want to spend big, not just on Osimhen, because as we'll come on to a bit later, there'll be a mad merry-go-round of movement of many top strikers. So anybody wanting to invest in that minimum 50, maximum 100+ million striker, and there'll be many of them on the move, may have to wait for outgoings, may wait until after the cutoff. So we may get this situation where it's actually Osimhen who's left sort of hanging because he knows, let's just say hypothetically, it's Chelsea or PSG, and more so Chelsea because PSG are saving a lot of money by Mbappe leaving. And Osimhen may say, okay, I'm happy enough to sign. And Chelsea say, we can proceed, but potentially they need to wait for that outgoing first before it actually gets over the line. And if you remember, to Barcelona's detriment, that was kind of what they were saying to Lionel Messi. Just wait and wait and wait, and we'll get it done, and we'll find the financial means. And it dragged on, and eventually Messi lost confidence and ended up going to Inter Miami instead. So that's a little bit of a warning sign. But I think with Osimhen, it's a long summer window. And if he has to wait, he'll be prepared to wait, especially if he's already pre-decided before the window opens where he wants to end up.
Well, we'll be talking a little bit more about Lionel Messi in just a while, because Guillem Balague is going to join us. His new book about Lionel Messi, the only official biography that Messi has done, is now being launched in the United States. And we're talking to Guillem very shortly. But first, let's get hold of our transfer guru, Fabrizio Romano, and get him on the question of Victor Osimhen. Fabrizio, thanks as ever for joining us. Let's start with Victor Osimhen then. When he says he's made up his mind about what's next, does that mean he's set on one specific club or league, or just that he's definitely leaving Napoli?
No, I can guarantee that when he said that, he just meant that he's going to leave Napoli. He's planning to leave Napoli, so he expects to get this move in the summer transfer window, but not yet with a specific club. I'm 100% sure of what I'm saying, speaking to sources very close to Victor. So in this moment, I can guarantee that Victor Osimhen has not agreed anything yet with any club. Of course, there is a lot of interest from different countries, different leagues, so the situation is completely open. There is a release clause, and this is good news for Osimhen, because otherwise to negotiate with Napoli is really tough. This is why he accepted to extend his contract in December. Otherwise, that was not going to happen without the release clause, which is around 120, 130 million euros. So everything is set for his summer exit. Also, Napoli's strategy for the summer transfer window is already including this prospect of Victor Osimhen leaving the club, but he hasn't decided yet which one is going to be his next club.
So do you think Napoli will force anyone who's going to buy Victor Osimhen to pay this 120 million euros or whatever, or is there some sort of room for negotiation, do you feel, in this?
Usually with Napoli, it's really difficult to find room for negotiations. Really complicated, really tough with the president, De Laurentiis. But you never know in football, because maybe there could be a player included in the deal, or maybe they can offer any way for Napoli to change the price and discuss a different formula of the deal. But the total value has to go around 120, 130 million euros. I think the mission of Napoli is to make the biggest sale ever in Serie A after Romelu Lukaku from Inter to Chelsea. Victor Osimhen with 120, 25 would be the biggest ever in Serie A. So I think this is the mission, and this is going to be the target, obviously, for Aurelio De Laurentiis.
And we hear a lot that Osimhen is associated with Chelsea, and that's a possible place he could end up at Stamford Bridge. Are Chelsea front runners, do you feel?
I'm not sure they're front runners, but I'm sure they are in the race. I'm sure they have a strong interest. This is something they already checked in October, November, when problems started between Victor Osimhen and Napoli. We remember all the stuff out of the pitch, creating problems between Victor Osimhen and the club. A lot of stories involving the Nigerian striker and the club. So in that moment, Chelsea started to check the situation around Victor Osimhen, and the interest has always been there. It was never a possibility to sign Osimhen in January because Napoli didn't want to sell him, and he was 100% focused on the AFCON, so it was never a concrete negotiation for the January transfer window. But it's also fair to say that Chelsea never entered into any concrete conversation for strikers in January, because I believe they know that in summer there will be different strikers available, and for sure Victor Osimhen is one of them. Victor Osimhen is in the list, and for sure Victor Osimhen considers Chelsea one of the most interesting options in the race, for sure.
Fabrizio, as you alluded to, it's going to be a summer of high-profile strikers moving, much like, I suppose, last summer, but that was midfielders. But there's lots of different names that are linked with a range of top clubs, including Chelsea. Ivan Toney is one of them. He's clearly going to be in demand. Do you think a Brentford exit is guaranteed this summer, or might suitors wait for potential free agency in 2025?
Guaranteed, I can't say that, but I think there is a very good chance. If I had to do a percentage, I would say something around 70-80%. So a very high percentage, because the player wants to go. He wants to try a new experience. Also, Brentford already signed an important striker from Bruges, Igor, who is going to join the club in the summer. So they are preparing for life without Ivan Toney. I don't think it's guaranteed because nothing has been agreed yet, but the player is going to look for opportunities. So I'm not sure Chelsea are that convinced on Ivan Toney anymore. He was a name they had in the list 1 year ago when they were considering a striker investment. Then they started to look at different kind of players also in terms of age. So let's see what Chelsea will decide for the summer. But I'm sure that Toney could be an option, for example, for Arsenal, in case they decide to go for that kind of striker, or if they want a young one, of course, there are other names. But Toney could be an interesting opportunity. And then let's see what Manchester United decide to do, because Man United will also be in the market for a striker. Of course, they have Rasmus Højlund, so it's not that urgent, but they have to decide internally whether they want to go for an experienced striker. Ivan Toney could be a fantastic solution, or if they want a young striker like many others that are available on the market.
Yeah, speaking of young strikers, one of them is Benjamin Sesko. I know he's a player that you rate highly. Where do you see him ending up?
Good question. I think England is a serious opportunity, because there are clubs constantly monitoring Benjamin Sesko since he was already at Salzburg. Then he joined Leipzig, and they keep following the player. Also from Italy, there is interest, but I think it's going to be complicated for Italian clubs to pay that amount of money for Benjamin Sesko. For clubs in England, it could be different. So, for example, clubs like also Chelsea, but it's the same for Arsenal. They sent their scouts multiple times to follow Sesko. Let's see now what's going to happen with the new board of Manchester United. I think it's a very open situation for Sesko. In this case, another problem is also, we know, as we said, for Napoli and Victor Osimhen, how tough it is to negotiate with Leipzig. And also Sesko started to play as a starter at Leipzig in the recent months, not since the beginning of the season. So Leipzig could also decide to try to keep the player for one more season and maybe sell him in summer 25. So I think for Sesko it's not going to be that easy, but interest is there. And my feeling is that once again, England is the most likely solution.
Well, the Swede Victor Gyökeres has been linked with Chelsea and Arsenal. Do you think Sporting would demand his release clauses paid this summer?
Yes, because knowing how they work in Portugal, I still remember how tough it was for Tottenham to sign from the same club, Sporting, Pedro Porro. Was a fight for 4 weeks to sign him in the January transfer window 1 year ago. And they always want the entire release clause till the final money to let the player go when he's a superstar, like in this case, Victor Gyökeres. So I'm sure they will ask for the release clause, 100 million euros. And this is what they did also in January, when some clubs started to inquire about the situation of Gyökeres. That was never the case to make it happen in the January window, because they always wanted a clause. So I'm sure it's going to be difficult, but I'm also sure there will be interest. From what I'm hearing, in this case, Chelsea were already rumored in January as a potential destination for Gyökeres, but the information I got on Gyökeres is that Chelsea never started any conversation for him in the January transfer window, or with Sporting, or with people close to the player. So Chelsea at the moment are not working on the Victor Gyökeres case, on the Victor Gyökeres deal. So I think there are other names for Chelsea as priority, as we said, with Osimhen and others. Arsenal have been in attendance multiple times to follow Sporting, to follow Portuguese interesting players in the Portuguese league multiple times, like Diomande, like Gyökeres. So Arsenal are keeping close eye to that market. So let's see what Arsenal decide to do, or if some other club will jump into this conversation. But Gyökeres already knows, obviously, English football, and so that could be a point for him.
Two potentially cheaper names, certainly compared to those we've spoken about so far. Stuttgart's Sergio Guirassy and Bologna's Joshua Zirkzee. Do you see both moving this summer?
Yeah, I think yes. Because for Guirassy, the release clause is an incredible opportunity. He's still around 17.5, 18 million euros, and it was already really close to being triggered in the January transfer window. Then Stuttgart made an amazing job in convincing the player to stay at the club, to focus on the AFCON, and then rejoin Stuttgart, enjoy the second part of the season with them, and then leave in the summer transfer window. So I think he's going to leave in the summer transfer window. There was interest from Milan in the January window, but let's see if they return in the summer. At the moment, I'm not aware of any fresh contact between Milan and Guirassy. In Premier League, some clubs were interested, like West Ham, for example. Let's see if they return on that player, or some other club will join the race, also from Bundesliga maybe. But I'm sure that Guirassy will have very good chances to leave Stuttgart in the summer transfer window. And for Joshua Zirkzee, I think the same, honestly. He's doing fantastic at Bologna. So let's see what concrete interest will appear in the next weeks, because at the moment, many clubs are following him, monitoring him, but no one started a concrete conversation with the player side or with Bologna to sign him in the summer. But I'm sure the interest will be there, and I think it will be really difficult for Bologna to keep the player, because he's doing wonderful. And it's not just about goals. If you look at Bologna games, they're doing something unbelievable in terms of quality of play, and what Joshua Zirkzee is doing also in the League Cup with the squad is something impressive. So top quality striker, and I think many clubs will be there.
Yeah, he reminds me a lot of Olivier Giroud. Let's move on to Marcus Rashford. We know historically he's been appreciated by PSG. Any chance Rashford decides to leave Old Trafford, despite quite recently signing that new long-term deal?
Yeah, let's see what happens at Manchester United in general, I think, with the entire strategy with new owners. So I think that is going to be an important point. But at the moment, I have absolutely no message coming from Rashford camp or people close to the player mentioning any opportunity to leave Manchester United. He's 100% focused on Manchester United. I think it's also important for Man United to have players like Marcus Rashford coming from the academy, trusting the club and loving the club. It's something really important to rebuild in the future. But let's see what happens in the summer. At the moment, it's really quiet around Rashford, and I still think that he has a very good chance to continue at United.
Okay, Fabrizio, as ever, thanks very much indeed for joining us on the debrief.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Ciao, Fabrizio.
Fabrizio, a little bit earlier, plenty of questions coming in after what Fabrizio has been saying, some of which you can answer, Ben. And I know we asked Fabrizio this last week because that was the topic of the debrief last week. Check it out if you want to listen to anything that was said then, because actually most of the comments still apply now. And the question being Xabi Alonso and where he might end up, and how confident Liverpool are of them grabbing him so that he could take over from Jurgen Klopp.
Yeah, just briefly on this one, Liverpool have got a process. Sporting director first, manager second. So they're not concerned by Bayern or panicked, because Alonso's not going to rush any decision either. So just because Bayern might be advancing things a little bit faster because they can, it doesn't mean that Alonso's going to say, okay, I'm going to take the first offer that's made to me. Leverkusen also deny any formal approach, and they're a little bit irked by this suggestion that Bayern are talking to Alonso. It's being denied at the moment by the Alonso camp. You can have informal discussions, you can be aware of an opportunity, but Alonso is focused on Leverkusen. Liverpool are focused on sporting director. So by late March, early April, I think Liverpool will start to begin their formal interview process. And of course, Alonso will be a candidate. Liverpool are confident in their pitch and their project. Bayern have Alonso high on the list. So it looks like a head-to-head. But remember, Alonso could say, should he, as is now expected with a 10-point lead, if he wins the title, stay at Leverkusen and then play Champions League and wait for the Real Madrid vacancy in 2025 when Carlo Ancelotti's contract expires and he's widely expected to leave. So Alonso can have his cake and eat it. He doesn't need to take the first offer that's landed on his table. And this is why Liverpool are unconcerned by Bayern. They feel that they have a strong pitch. If they choose Alonso, great, but there'll be several other candidates, and Ruben Amorim is also expected to be one of them.
Great, Ben. Thanks very much indeed. Look, a little bit earlier on, we also spoke to Guillem Balague. Now, Guillem is the man who knows not only about Victor Osimhen and where he may be going, having charted his career, but also Lionel Messi. There's no one who is closer to Lionel Messi than Guillem Balague. His official biography, the only official biography, is out now in the US. And a little bit earlier, Ben caught up with Guillem.
Guillem, great to see you as ever. Heading now into this summer, we've got more movement from a new generation of younger strikers. And that's potentially catalyzed by Kylian Mbappe, who's widely expected to join Real Madrid. So let's start with him. What do we know, and how has this move to Real Madrid, or likely move to Real Madrid, come about?
What we know is that Real Madrid did the usual thing of either now or never, twice, and still Mbappe didn't didn't go for it. And it was Mbappe who decided the timing of the move. And he thought, okay, I'm 25 now. It's my time to leave PSG. If anybody had any doubt, Luis Enrique last night basically confirmed that what we all know, that he is going to leave. Remember, the PSG have not said anything officially, but we know from PSG that Mbappe will not continue, and that he's told that to Nasser Al-Khelaifi and everybody else, players as well. So they all know that's happening. The doubt would have been where next, but basically it was Mbappe saying, now is my time to go to Real Madrid, and that's what's going to happen. Real Madrid, as always, trying to use their pull and the weight, the historic weight, not so much the financial weight, to decide the timings, but it was Mbappe who thought the moment is now. But they still got to, of course, once the move has been agreed in terms of it's going to happen, we know it's going to happen, there are details that have to be finalized and ironed out, including image rights. You know that Real Madrid wants 50% of the image rights of whoever comes in. And originally, they may have asked that to Mbappe, but they're not going to get that. And I think Real Madrid is happy to negotiate it down to a percentage, some kind that somehow brings money to them. That's part of what they do, of course, part of their income, but it won't be 50%. That's one of the things that they're talking about. Mbappe has to reduce his wages massively, but again, he'll be happy with it because he will get a big percentage of his image rights, which he gets now at PSG anyway. So one thing he's got very clear, Mbappe, is that he will lose money. Lose money, that may not be the word. Compared to PSG, he won't earn as much, still will earn a lot. We think it could be about 30 million euros net at Real Madrid, but that's not the reported 100 million net that he gets at PSG right now. In any case, I think he's all right now. If he retired today, he'll have all the money he needs in the world. But what he wants is to succeed at Real Madrid. And you look at the squad, you add Mbappe in, and I don't see a stronger 11 in the world, perhaps Manchester City, that's all.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And from PSG's point of view, they'll look to strengthen and try and improve their 11 because of Mbappe's imminent departure. What are they going to get, financially speaking, ballpark, by Kylian Mbappe leaving? And how easily will they then be able to invest that money?
I reckon they're going to save about 200 million euros. That's what they're saying they will save. And that doesn't include the 80 million euros that Mbappe has decided, the loyalty bonus that Mbappe has decided not to charge PSG. So it's a big gap, big bag of money but that now PSG will have to invest. We've heard Rafael Leao saying he wants to stay at AC Milan, but he was certainly a target. And the other one, the clear one, the one that we all think it could happen, it will happen, it may happen, is Victor Osimhen going to PSG. Victor has already for a few months been saying that he knows what his future is, where it lies. I think that has always been the plan of PSG, to approach him and become the focal point of this PSG. It was interesting last night in the game against Real Sociedad that Mbappe continued playing, attacking from the left-hand side. He's very dangerous there. But the 9 was actually Dembélé. Well, with Victor Osimhen and without Mbappe, the team will be different, but still dangerous. Still a team that seems to be all thinking the same way. And this is the first time it's happened for a long, long time at PSG. You put Victor Osimhen with a coach like Luis Enrique that will appreciate his work without the ball, his movement, his personality. All of that will help PSG to basically get in the winning path.
And do you think a move to Ligue 1 is likely comparative to Osimhen picking the Premier League? We've heard a lot of clamour about Osimhen and Chelsea and emulating Didier Drogba. But do you feel like Paris is a real possibility?
It's going to be interesting what's going to happen with the top Premier League clubs that need a striker if we stay in that department. Manchester United may definitely need one. Some say that Arsenal may be looking for one as well. Certainly Chelsea too. Not so much Liverpool, not so much, of course, Manchester City for now. So out of those, and with PSG in the horizon, if I was Victor Osimhen, I will go to PSG. not only he knows Legan well from his time at Lille, he suits very well the young team that Luis Enrique's putting together. The work rate that's needed, he will certainly add. The style would suit him as well. He's very good both with his movement against a static defense, if you like, how he fixes the centre backs and helps others to use the space that he creates, but also when they counter-attack, he's also very, very good at it. We see all that at Napoli. It's time for him to move on to the next level, and that will be the next level.
We know a lot about Osimhen, the footballer, but what about Osimhen, the personality?
I've learned a lot about Osimhen in recent times. I've been traveling for CBS to Napoli twice in the last year, 3 times actually. And every time I obviously you get to know more and more of the players involved, and that gives 3 dimensions to when you talk about the team. And in the case of Osimhen, I know he came from a very, very poor district in Lagos in Nigeria, one with a rubbish dump around it. That got out toxic smells and toxic air. That's the basis of his, if you like, his background. He had to come out of there, and you don't get many opportunities when that happens. But having failed in a trial when he was a kid, somebody offered the possibility of joining a national trial 300 miles away from Lagos, and he cramped in a car, 6 players cramped in a little car to get that trip, and he had 15 minutes to actually impress. It was a trial to be part of the under-17s Nigeria national team, and he failed on the first occasion. Somebody pointed out to Amunike, you must remember him, former Barcelona player, who was the coach of the under-17s national team, under-17. Somebody said, "Oh, you have to give him another chance." He did, and then he became superstar for both the African Cup under-17 and the World Cup. He was the best player there, best goal scorer. And after that, he started exploring the possibilities of going to Europe, and it wasn't an easy ride for him. Went to Wolfsburg, didn't work out, ended up in Charleroi in Belgium, and the rest is history because he succeeded there. Lille signed him, then went to Napoli for big money, and he knows that when opportunities arrive, you've got to embrace it with both hands, and that's what he's doing. It looks like, doesn't he, that every game is his last game. It looks like it's a game to impress every time. And that kind of mentality and personality is what makes him, because we all are the consequences of our surroundings and of our background. And that's the story of Osimhen.
Just finally on Osimhen, do you think he'll relish the 100 million price tag that he's inevitably going to go for? Because the feeling is that it might be release clause or nothing with Napoli. Or is he the kind of player that might be a little bit burdened by that kind of number?
I don't think he'll be fazed by it. I think he's ready for the next level, and the next level is winning the bigger competitions. I do feel that we're talking about City and obviously Real Madrid as having top squads. PSG are looking really, really good because ahead of the players, ahead of the manager, ahead of whatever is desired in Qatar or by the chairman, it seems to be succeeding an idea of what they want to be for the first time in a long, long time. So if you put the right complement to it, the right parts of the puzzle, and Osimhen could be that, then you've got really a very powerful team. So I'm looking forward to see more of PSG with Victor in it.
And before I let you go, where can people find the book if they want to play catch up with me and try and finish it before me?
You'll find it on Amazon, but that always is the easy option. But I believe that some of the big branches of bookstores are having the Messi authorized biography, which is called Messi. It's easy to find.
It is easy to find, and it's well worth a read. That is Lionel Messi. That Guillem Balague is talking about. It's a fantastic book. Go out and get it. Thanks, Guillem, for your time. Ben, I want to whip through a few of the questions that we've got here that we might be able to answer. What's the chance of Rashford going to PSG? Well, I think, you know, we've talked about PSG before, haven't we? And it's very interesting to hear what Guillem has got to say, that he thinks Osimhen is a fit for PSG and very possibly going there. And so that would disappoint Chelsea fans, where you've got Fabrizio saying they're not necessarily front runners, but do have a good chance. And Mikel John Obi, who spoke to us earlier on, who's doing his damnedest to try and get Victor Osimhen to Stamford Bridge.
Yeah, I think just whizzing through very quickly before we wrap up, we're going to see a crazy merry-go-round of movement of strikers. So Rashford to PSG is possible, but only if Rashford indicates to PSG that he wants the move, because PSG felt they were being used for games prior to Rashford renewing at Old Trafford. And at the moment, there's no real feeling that Rashford wants to leave Old Trafford. He's quite excited by the new Ratcliffe-led prospect. We've had a lot on Ivan Toney, possible this summer, but don't rule out free agency in 2025. Jonathan David is an interesting one. Graham Potter actually liked him for Chelsea, but nobody really else in the recruitment team pushing that particular move. Spurs have looked at David before. Benjamin Sesko for PSG or for Chelsea. So maybe whoever doesn't get Osimhen will end up getting Sesko instead, but don't rule out Chelsea looking for both. Victor Gyökeres at Arsenal. I know that Real Madrid said he'd love him there. Well, they've scouted him, but there's a big release clause, and that might put suitors off. And then just finally, I would mention Joshua Zirkzee. Fabrizio, if you missed it, spoke about him, but he reminds me of Olivier Giroud. And I wouldn't rule out a move from a Premier League club. And both Spurs and Arsenal have looked at the informed Bologna striker. And then if you're a Newcastle fan, keep an eye on Sergio Guirassy as well. And there's a very affordable release clause there. And he's another player that's had an excellent season at Stuttgart. So it's going to be strikers on the move this summer.
That's right. And everyone wants a decent striker. Everyone's got to score goals. My thanks to everyone this week. We have been inundated with questions. And just for those of you who are joining us for the first time, Fabrizio Romano is with us every single week. So we can ask Fabrizio, and indeed you can ask Fabrizio whatever you like, and we will get him to answer that when he joins the debrief. Ben, as ever, thank you very much indeed for your input. Hugely informational what you've come out with today on Chelsea. Victor Osimhen was our topic, and boy, he has got the choice of more or less any club in Europe where he might want to go during the summer. You have been listening. Yeah, go on.
You end this without one word. I know we're tight for time, but I'm going to give it in a moment. Where will Osimhen end up? One word, one club.
Chelsea.
You've taken my answer. I think Chelsea. Balague will not be pleased. Maybe
he won't. We've gone against what Guillem said, and I've never done that in my life because he's always right. Yeah, we both think he will end up at Stamford Bridge and would be a very good fit there. Although, as Ben said earlier in this podcast, that means there will be a lot of exits from Stamford Bridge, because if we believe what Fabrizio Romano said, the price tag could be nearer 120 or 130 million euros, with a wage packet of about £250,000 a week. And therefore, a number of players would have to leave Stamford Bridge to finance that and keep them within the financial limitations that they have on them by the Premier League. You have been listening to the debrief. I hope you've enjoyed it. We're here every single week, Ben Jacobs and myself. From both of us, we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.